Dear beautiful people, I hope you all had some beautiful holidays where there wasn't only noise, but there was a chance to turn inward, to enjoy the stillness, the silence, to get away from society life a little bit and to get to know yourselves better and to aid yourselves in this transition from one state of consciousness into another, because this is what this year was about. And the coming year, in that sense, introduces a renaissance of spiritual knowledge that seemed lost, and many of you will slowly begin to lose your amnesia and remember why you're here. So I suggest to you to not get caught up in the appearances of what's going on the planet, in the news, because that is deceiving. The energy behind it is what is much closer to realizing truth. There's a process going on of clearing out of the old, but when the old surfaces, it subjectively appears as if things are getting worse, but it's not. Many of you who have done the shadow work know on an individual level, when you do this shadow work, well, initially it's painful, but when you start clearing out, your amnesia of who you are is fading away, and you begin to remember your intuition, spiritual abilities, and so on. So what's happening individually is also happening collectively, and what was there is just brought to the surface. It's not just happening right now, it's not just coming right now, it's just being brought to the surface, so the collective can take responsibility for the energies and transform them. Now, with that spirit, I wanted to share a podcast I did with Gloria Goldberg again. This time it's not the Hot Topics Live podcast, but it's her own podcast that she does by herself. It's called the Bilingual show, the Gloria, and I will post a link to her show in the description. So if you want to support her work or leave a comment, you can do this following the link. Now, we spoke in depth about how to cure depression, and I think this is one of the major experiences in the human collective is depression, because of ego state of consciousness and not knowing how to connect with your soul. So this is of deep relevance for many of you who have had depressive episodes. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Be well, my friends.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Bilingual show, the Gloria. And this is Gloria Goldberg, the founder of the podcast Unbreakable Life with Glory, where I talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD, a natural way and a holistic way to always make you feel better. So how's everybody today? I'm so happy today because I be able to come here and present this show for you guys. You know, it's my passion to help you feel better when it's about depression and anxiety and also PTSD. But today is being a very special day. This morning I had a beautiful conversation with my brother almost for 3 hours, and I'm so amazed the transformation that he's doing. And when I received this conversation with people that are doing transformations and they told me about the experience, I feel like amazing. And that's why we come here to this world, to transform, to evolve, to be better, and to give the best things of us. So I've been working a lot lately and trying to put a lot of topics, a lot of things for you guys to be able to, for me to be able for you guys to transform. And you know, the bilingual show, the Gloria, is in 2 languages. It's in Spanish and it's in Spanish and English. And one Friday is in English and one Friday is in Spanish, and this Friday is in English. So I don't want to talk too much about me today because, again, I have a beautiful, beautiful guest that I love him so much because I know him. He's been with me. I've been with him. I've been working with him. He's my coach, my spiritual coach. He is a psychotherapist, and he's been working with me with my traumas, with my issues, to see where all my depression come from, where all my anxiety come from. And it's a process. Everything that you do to trying to remove your traumas and your issues is step by step. And everybody have a different time to transform. And once you recognize that you can transform, is the time for you to continue the transformation. And when I met Julian, his name is Julian Paulson, and when I met him, I said, "Oh my God, it's unbelievable how beautiful he expressed her his acknowledgement, how he can, teach me so many things for me to feel better." And with him, I learned a lot. With him, I still learning, because you never stop learning. I still having some sessions with him because I'm in that process. And when you are treating your depression and anxiety and your traumas, it takes a time, it takes a work from you to be able to evolve. And what he does is just to guide you and help you, to listen to you, and then he will tell you exactly what exactly he recommend you to do. But it's up to you to recognize that you are wrong, to recognize that you have issues, to recognize that you need to be better. And that's the hard part, because when we just always think that we know all, that everybody have to listen to us, that the last word is me and nobody else, then we have a problem, because we're not allowing ourselves to be who really we are. We are putting a lot of walls around us to not be able to allow us to see all the problems that we have. And sometimes no, we mostly time we act in conscious and conscious. So when you're conscious, you know what you're doing. And where you are unconscious, you react and say and do and stuff that you don't know why you do that. So he helped me a lot with that. And I'm so happy that he's here today, and so happy that he said yes, because he's really, really busy. And for him to be here with me is like I'm honored to have him. So I don't want to wait too much, because there's a lot of things that we're gonna talk today, and we're gonna talk about depression. And I'm so happy to talk about that with him, for you guys to listen what he have to say today. So let me bring Julian Paulson. Hi, Julian.
Hey, Gloria, thank you for having me. Again, I'm really joyful about this opportunity to share some knowledge to aid people in transforming themselves, because our consciousness creates our reality. This is our inner garden. And if we take care of our inner garden, the seeds that we put into the ground, the harvest is going to be a beautiful one. And many people are not aware of that they had a garden since they were children, and other people have put stuff into their garden. And this is what became their identity. And when they act from that identity, then they feel depressed. When they act from their true self, they stop feeling depressed. And this is something that even clinical psychology to this point hasn't really figured out. And that's why I'm thankful that you introduced me also as a spiritual coach, because at some point I very quickly realized the modern psychotherapy approach is just insufficient. It's a tremendously limited framework. It teaches a few things very well, but when it really comes to understanding what is a human being, this is where they fail, because they still have a materialistic ideology and do not understand a very simple fact. Depression happens when you act separate from your soul consciousness. That means when you're not in touch with your intuition, you start suffering, you experience negativity.
That's what I was gonna ask you, and I started to interrupt you. So can you explain a little bit more simple that, so people will understand better why we get depression?
All right. So let's say when you are a child, you're naturally being yourself. Yeah. You just express yourself as you feel, as you think, as you experience. Because as a child, you have no idea of right and wrong. That means you have no belief system in the head that says you can't do this or you can't express yourself like that. But then you're born into a society, and this society starts indoctrinating or programming you into their belief system. Now, if a part of your self-expression is not accepted by the belief system, you get punished for that part of self-expression. And as a child, since you're physically weaker than the adults and they can punish you and hurt you and they have power over you, at some point you start lying about what you feel. You start suppressing it. You start pretending you're not feeling what you're feeling. And when that happens, you stop disconnecting yourself from your own intuition. You're basically dissociating from your soul. And then you start creating an identity that we could call the ego. And this is the identity, the role that you play in society that you use as a shield to avoid further trauma. So you start obeying, you start lying, you start manipulating, and this is corruption. So when you're corrupt, you're depressed. That's a tough pill to swallow for many people, but this is what happens. So basically, are you aligned with your intuition? You don't suffer. Are you living a life that is basically a lie, but you're unconscious of the fact that it is a lie because nobody told you how to access that truth? Then you feel depressed. In a way, no matter how complex or complicated the depression looks, no matter how many fancy modern diagnoses we have, from personality disorders or different varieties of depression or psychosis, schizophrenia, mania, whatever you want to pick, ultimately all of this is a misalignment. You're not aligned with your intuitive self, but you have a fake self that you use as a shielding to avoid a re-traumatization that you experienced as a child. But that makes you obedient and that makes you a slave in the system.
Right.
And this is what causes depression, because you're not following your heart. You're not acting from authenticity, but you have learned to lie and manipulate in order to be comfortable and safe. But guess what? That's not joy. That's not peace. That's not passion. You're settling for something less than yourself in order to be safe. And then you get depressed.
Wow. So how people can start removing all these traumas in a way for them to feel free and to feel authentic with themselves?
Right. Well, again, this is what you said beautifully. It's a process. So there are certain steps to take. At least in the West, the Western psychotherapists, especially the behaviorists, the cognitive behavioral therapists, have understood that mindfulness is a key to come to a deeper understanding, because you said it clearly, when you are unconscious, you don't know why you are reacting. You don't know why you're acting in a certain way because you can't observe it. So you need to first be able to observe the dysfunctional conditioning. If you can't observe it, you act it out. So we need to bring basically the dysfunctional conditioning into our awareness. Well, how do we do this? By moving our attention away from the thought process, into the breathing, back into the body. Why is this so? Because if I'm aware of my body, my awareness is not fully trapped in thought. If I'm fully trapped in thought, I'm unconscious, I'm just acting out what the thoughts are doing, because I have no capacity of observing the thought. In order to observe the thought and to see what's the dysfunctional programming saying, what are the judgments, what are the beliefs, the expectations, I need to step out of the mind, and I can only do this by reconnecting with the body. Because now my attention is not fully here, but partially in the body. And now you have a detachment. Instead of being in it, you look at it from the outside. Now you have choice. Before, there is no choice. You just act out your traumas. So we first need to establish choice. And through mindfulness and meditation practices, we do that. Once that is established, you can start observing your ego. Your ego is your trauma personality that you have developed to survive. But it's not you. It pretends to be you, but it's not you, and it's not serving you any longer when you are an adult. So then you start watching your ego. And it might be pretty challenging, because initially you're like pretty shocked what's in there.
Because before you didn't know what's in there. Suddenly you're watching it, you're like, whoa, that's so mean. That's so cruel. Like all the judgments running in the mind. It's a little bit overwhelming in the beginning. But when you then learn to watch the mind without being triggered, means without reacting, you stop energizing the ego identity, and it loses momentum. Because any program in the nervous system only stays there as long as you use it. So when you stop using it, it starts deteriorating. So the moment you are aware through mindfulness and you watch the mind, now you're outside of it. So now you can choose which thought to give energy, right? So you stop giving the ego energy, it stops having this automatic grip on your consciousness. You're switching the default mode of your nervous system from automatic to intuitive. That's the key. And the moment you become intuitive, your soul wakes up, your intuition wakes up. And when you then start meditating, the shadow work happens. That means the clearing of the old energies. When you are aware in the present moment, you have the opportunity to not create further suffering. But you still got to clear out the old suffering. Because you still carry that energy. And the old pain is what separates you from your soul. So basically, if there's a lot of pain between the personality and the soul, we need to bring our awareness into the pain. Now we start clearing it out, we increase in energy, start fusing with our soul, and at some point we act as a unit. So personality and soul become one. When you act separately from soul, you are in the ego state, and that's the unconscious state, and this is usually a mentally ill state. Does that make sense?
Yes. Here Ronnie say, I let it go and forget about it. I had so much trauma in my life. So you have to let it go and make peace with yourself. Yes, this is very easy to say, but for a lot of people it's very easy to let it go. Right, right, Julian?
Well, in order to let it go, you need to understand it. If you don't understand it, you won't accept it. And when you don't accept it, you judge it. And everything you judge sticks. So what I'm saying is, let's say when I do shadow work, I'm gonna say how it looks like when you're a little bit more advanced in practice at some point. So let's say if I would experience being triggered emotionally by something, I would sit down in meditation and I just completely let go of any sense or need for control. I stop analyzing, I stop producing thoughts, so I can still my mind to such a degree that there is no thought at all. And in that state, I start feeling my body. And when I feel my body, I feel where the emotion is. And this is where the trauma is. So when I feel the emotion, I sense the energy body where the trauma information is stored beyond the physical body. It's like an onion. There are layers over layers over layers. So I start feeling that energy. And now it starts spilling into my conscious mind. I can relive the trauma as a holographic experience, like a 3D visual experience. So I relive the trauma as if I am a neutral observer. And then I see, for example, what has my younger self felt? What has the perpetrator felt, for example, the one who causes the suffering? And when I come to a complete understanding, that means a compassionate and loving understanding of my younger version and a compassionate and loving understanding of the perpetrator, then forgiveness happens, peace happens, and the energy of the memory changed. And when the energy of the memory changed, it stops manifesting as suffering. That's the key. Now, how can we come to a compassionate understanding of the perpetrator? Because this is the toughest nut to crack for most people. How to love someone who hurt you, right? Well, one of my clients recently, she had an experience where she was raped by her stepfather when she was 11 years old. And this was a very powerful example because we did this type of shadow work. We found the emotional pain in her body. She let go, and meditatively she went into the memory and basically relived the memory in her mind. And then I asked her, look at your 11-year-old self being raped. What would she have liked instead? Like, what was her need? What did she actually need? And she said, well, she just wanted to sit on a beach, or she wanted to go to a museum as an 11-year-old girl. I said, all right, do this with your younger self in your mind. Like give your younger self the love and attention that the younger self did not get at that time when the trauma happened. So she did that. She suddenly started like grieving, crying within the meditation, but clearing the old energies. In that moment, a sense of peace arose. And from this sense of peace, now I said, okay, let's look at how the perpetrator felt. And she shifted into the perspective of the perpetrator. And now she said something tremendously powerful. She said, I see a 6-year-old boy. Why did she see a 6-year-old boy? Because that's when her perpetrator got raped.
Wow. So it's a chain.
Exactly. This is the wheel of karma. Victims become perpetrators, perpetrators become victims. And the only way to break this chain of karma is through compassionate understanding and forgiveness. So those who judge the perpetrators, this is a very uncomfortable truth. And when I say that, some will blame me, for example, and say, well, you're victim shaming. I'm not victim shaming. I'm saying a simple fact. If you cannot forgive your perpetrators, you hold on to a negative energy of suffering and will make yourself suffer. And this negative energy will influence your life unconsciously because you get in arguments with people, you might become verbally abusive or whatever it is. And this is what people who get a sense of narcissism or self-importance from the victim identity don't like to hear. But you need to get over that narcissism, over that victim identity, because otherwise you can't heal. But when you begin to understand, well, he was a 6-year-old boy when he got raped, you understand he couldn't forgive his perpetrator. Maybe he can't even remember his perpetrator because he did not learn how to practice yoga or meditation or hypnosis or took psychedelics in order to have access to the trauma. So when someone cannot forgive, they start expressing the perpetrator energy. They become what they judge. It's very important. So we need to get over the judgment and come to a compassionate understanding. And the moment she saw the 6-year-old boy, she felt love for the perpetrator. And in that moment, the chain was broken. She had no feeling of, I need to be mean to people. And usually when are we mean to people? When we feel like a victim, because then we feel justified in hurting people. And this is how the chain continues. So that's why shadow work is a very uncomfortable work, but it's the work that needs to be done. It cannot be avoided. And as long as people are avoiding it, they stay in the ego. And that's a fact of life.
So, wow. So probably a lot of people that suffer from depression don't have no idea why they have that depression. And they they take medication, they blaming everybody for their depression. But the point for you to release your depression, to cure your depression, is, like you said, to go to the roots of what happens in the moment that create that trauma, for you to release that.
Yes, that is unavoidable. That is unavoidable. I do understand that when I interact with a variety of different clients, the clients that I meet, they have different levels of evolution of consciousness. And then we need to speak about something much deeper, that is soul evolution. Because we have more than one life. And this is something I could verify a lot of times, first of all, in clients of mine who through meditation would relive past life memory, also past life traumas. I did this myself as well, that I relived a lot of past life memories through meditation. So then we come to understand at some point that beings who had more lifetimes than others have more experience and therefore have a greater capacity of integrating difficult experience. So depending on who I interact with, their level of indoctrination in the system determines their ability to integrate. So it's a little bit chipping away at a defensive wall. Like chipping away, softening up the client for an incision. Yeah, basically a psychological surgery, like a mental energetic surgery that we go in there and we go at it. But you need a certain maturity in order to accept what you are about to see. And developing that maturity is a process. People who are very busy blaming and who are very busy being victims, they still need to suffer because they're not humble enough to do the work. That's an unfortunate fact. It's an unfortunate truth. I'm not sugarcoating that for anyone because I know what needs to be done based on my professional experience. So it needs to be a willingness to investigate one's own darker aspects, one's own shadow side in order to start healing. And when I'm busy being a victim, I pretend everything is outside of me. I say it's the government, it's my neighbors, it's my wife, it's my parents, it's my mother-in-law, or whatever. That's not true. It's your own decisions. It's your own energy. And owning up is what liberates. Taking responsibility is what liberates. So when you start owning the process of healing and you set your attention, I really want to heal, and now I'm humble enough, then you can receive and you can make really rather quick progress. But it takes a certain humility to say, now I'm listening. Now I let go of my defenses. Now I let go of my vanity, of my pride. Now I'm really having a look at all the little shames and guilts that I feel inside that I pretend are not there, and I pretend they are in other people. Yeah. So we need to own up. And when we're willing to own up, it's not an easy process. Yeah, a lot of people experience the shadow work as very painful, but here is the very profound key. The shadow work is only temporarily painful because you're clearing out the old pain, but you're not creating new pain. When you are unconscious and you're avoiding the pain, you don't want to work with the old pain, you're taking drugs, you're focused on materialism, you're obsessed with sex to avoid feeling bad, you're taking antidepressants to avoid feeling bad. All of that is just compensating for the symptom, but avoiding the root cause. You can eat antidepressants your whole life. You're not going to heal. That's a fact. So antidepressants, or let's say the modern psychiatry approach, the materialistic approach, where we say, oh, wow, there's an imbalance in the neurotransmitters because you are depressed. It's only a tiny perspective of what's really going on, and it's very misleading. Because if you have an imbalance in your neurotransmitters, it's because you have a trauma. There's something energetically going on. There's something going on in your consciousness. Shift your consciousness, your neurotransmitters go back to normal. An antidepressant is a crutch. It even offers you the ability to avoid the issue because you can numb the system, the symptom. But numbing the system doesn't give you meaning. This is why a lot of people, even when they take antidepressants, suicide. Because it's not a solution. You're just numbing the root cause, and you're actually diminishing your ability to have access. Because in order to have access, you need to be capable of feeling the pain. The beautiful message here is this. If you're willing to feel the pain, if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, this is, for example, what Zen monks, what Buddhist Zen monks practice. In meditation, they practice becoming comfortable, being uncomfortable. They stop reacting to the pain, and then they start decoding the pain by watching it and downloading the information within the pain into the consciousness, and then it can be worked with. And then it can be transformed. And once it is transformed, you stop being depressed because you have an energy release, an energy increase. So modern psychotherapy is only scratching the surface of the mystical process. That's important to understand. And unfortunately, the psychiatry system often keeps people ill because they treat them as a material object. They say, well, you have a chemical imbalance in the brain. That's what they treat. But they don't get to the traumatic experiences that have created a belief in you, a judgment in you, and that judgment creates your emotion and your reactions. Your emotions are your reactions. That's important to understand. And we suffer because we react to life. Instead of being creative with life, we react to life. Reacting always comes from trauma, is always unconscious, always comes from the ego. So to say we put a chemical into your brain so you don't have to feel, so you don't have to sense, means actually we're killing your intuitive access. We're
Yes.
killing your soul's ability of getting into the trauma.
Yeah. Because they're suppressing, like you said, they are suppressing the moment, they're suppressing the pain, they're suppressing the fear, because when you have depression also, it involves fear, it involves to be able to show their own self. And that's why they, like you said, they get all the shields around you, and that's why they are so defensive and reacted with other people. So how people can move from that, like I know they need a help, like a person from you, but if they don't have the resources to have somebody like you, how they can start being aware of their issues, what you can recommend to them to like start to do.
Well, what I would recommend are modern spiritual teachers, spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, because this is a key to becoming aware of the ego construct. If you're not aware of the ego's construct, you feel powerless. If you don't know where your anxiety comes from, like you try to self-medicate, this is what many people do, right? So you need to basically have a practice or a method, if you will, that slowly takes away the need to self-medicate. So when you can balance your own energies and your own emotions, you stop being dependent on outside intervention, like substance or pleasures and so on. There's nothing wrong with certain substances. There's also nothing wrong with pleasures. But if you're addicted to it, it's because you are avoiding an anxiety or pain, right? So why do I say I recommend modern spiritual teachers? Is because when you listen to some of them, in you, there will be an awareness growing. A mindfulness base will be established. So at first, you really need the shift out of the ego. You need to stop being in the movie in your mind and start watching the mind from the outside. And this is already a big breakthrough for people. Mindfulness is something that everybody can practice. I had clients who would come to me that want to learn mindfulness. And there are some who only took 2 weeks for them, 2 weeks with continuous practice to shift the default state of the nervous system around from a reactive life to a creative life. I'm not saying their work was done, but a lot of suffering was already leaving them because they stopped believing to be the voice in the head. You're not the voice in the head. This is something that modern psychotherapy can't explain to you, because a lot of psychotherapists still believe to this day that consciousness is being produced by the brain. It's not. It's why they're all trapped in their approaches. They could constantly try to fix the brain. The brain is just a result of how you have used your consciousness. So become aware of the brain by stepping out of the brain through some sort of meditative process. Many vehicles exist. You can supplement that with yoga, for example. You can supplement that with breathing exercises. Maybe even a psychedelic therapy for some people might be highly effective. Yeah, there are methods of how we try to break through this ego wall that shields you from your soul. That's important to understand. And when you open to that, to understand that the underlying cause is of a much deeper nature than just in the brain, that it is a spiritual matter, you become much more open to listen to certain teachers who can give you methods and tools that you can basically become your own therapist. But I don't recommend this for everyone. There's some who will do fine reading books. There will be some who will do fine watching seminars and speeches of let's say, modern spiritual teachers or psychotherapists and psychiatrists who have a spiritual approach, because they exist and they do wonderful work. Yeah. Some will be fine with that because when they start applying those methods, they will have some sort of result. But if you are really in a deep crisis and you're very confused, you basically need someone outside of you who's very clear who sense when you're fooling yourself. That's very important. As long as you don't have the ability to clear your own energy, you might need the assistance of someone who has cleared themselves. For example, if I do my shadow work, I don't get triggered. So if I don't get triggered, I don't have any beliefs about people. That means I can watch them in a much more objective way. So I can sense when they are unconscious. Now I can wake them up to it. I can say to one of my clients, hey, right now you're triggered. You're not there. Watch your breath. Return to this present moment. Look at me. So we get them out of the trauma response. So you might need this in the beginning. So even though many of us, when we really put our time in, we can find a huge degree of self-healing. In the beginning, it's helpful to have a teacher as a catalyst. At some point, you might not need a teacher because you're so in touch with your own soul that you experience, for example, in meditation, communication with your soul, and your own soul explains to you why you're depressed right now and what needs to be done. But before that is established, there's so much confusion. So in the beginning, it might be of great importance to have a teacher if you're not already very evolved.
Right. Now, what about the anxiety?
All right. So anxiety comes when you think in terms of time. That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
So the ego only exists as a concept. That means your identity is an illusion. How do we get to understand that your identity is an illusion? Well, if I watch my breath right now and I feel my body, suddenly I can watch my thoughts like a movie. I'm not immersed in the movie. I'm outside of it. It's like being in the cinema. Like I watch the movie and I'm conscious of the fact that I'm watching the movie. Now I realize, oh, my thought patterns are like this. Either they think of memories, which are often regrets, or they think of future, and that means expectations. Regrets lead to depression. Expectation leads to anxiety. What do memories and expectations have in common? Beliefs. When you have negative beliefs, you have regrets. And when you have negative beliefs, you have expectations. Suffering comes from memory and expectation. So to give you an example.
Yes, please.
In memory, you're powerless because it's past. There's nothing you can do about it. It's gone.
Right.
Expectation is future. It hasn't happened yet. So it's fictional. There's nothing you can do about it. So you're powerless, right? So your ego mind always tries to pull you into a scenario where you're powerless, either future or past, but it avoids the present moment like a pest. Because in the present moment, you become soul conscious. The present moment is not the present moment. It is the point of infinity where no time exists. And in that point, I am aware. I am aware of my existence beyond the human. And this is why the ego doesn't want to go there, because then its days are numbered. The ego always tries to keep you in expectations and regrets. So when you start being mindful and meditative, so you start watching your breath, you're slowing all your movements down. You start touching things, smelling things, tasting things, give the present moment and the sensation of the present moment all your attention. You start stepping out of the movie of the mind and you realize the ego is not you. It's just a software running in the head. A software that tries to stop you from becoming conscious. Why would that software try to stop you from becoming conscious, right? Mm-hmm. Because as a child, when you were conscious, you were punished for being conscious. So you have installed a defense mechanism that stops you from becoming conscious.
It makes sense.
Yeah, that's important to figure that out. This is the key ingredient. And when you've realized you're not the ego, then you can do the deep shadow work practice, not before.
So the person, for to be able to start removing the depression and anxiety, have, number one, they have to wake up, like start waking up and say, okay, this, oh, I having these issues. Right there is the number one sign, like, oh, what is these issues? And then number two is to want it to move that away, because you cannot move your traumas if you're not aware of, or if you don't want it.
Well, let's go deeper than this. It's very important to go much, much deeper than this. So if you're watching a movie, you are aware that you are not the movie, right? I placed you in a cinema, you're watching a movie. You know you've paid for the ticket, you're sitting down, you're fully aware that's a movie, right? Guess what? When you get born into a human body, you have amnesia. So you forgot that you bought the ticket to the human experience. That means you're entering the cinema of human experience being fully unaware that this is a trip that you're having. When you go to the cinema and you buy a ticket, you're conscious as a human being, there is a dimension outside of me, which I call a movie, and I'm going to watch it. It's not me. So even though I might be touched by what's going on in the movie screen, the emotions, or maybe something scary, but it's still not so severe because you're aware it's a movie, right? Guess what?
Right.
Your brain is a movie too. And you need to figure out your brain is a movie. Because if you don't figure out your brain is a movie, you believe to be your brain. You believe to be a body, yeah? A brain in a body. This is what you believe to be. And that's the ego state of consciousness. You're not a brain in a body. You are an awareness that is witnessing the experience of a brain in a body. That's a meta level higher or deeper, if you will. And that awareness needs to be established, because as long as you don't know that you're not the person, you can't change the person. You're trapped in the movie of the person. You need to step out of the person in order to be able to transform the person. Because if someone tries to change the person, you take it personal. You take offense. Why? Because you identified with this. To me, it's a suit. It's just a suit. The suit has a personality. The suit has an intelligence. But my own intelligence is much vaster than the intelligence of the suit. And I'm the master of my suit. My suit doesn't master me.
And that's what happens to a lot of people.
That's the depression then. The depression happens when you're caught up in the physicality. That's the key.
Wow. So people have to be more in the present to be able to start removing or cleaning all those memories that you said and the expectations that we have, and just be here and check what are you thinking, why you reacting this way, and why you're so sad, where these things coming from. And a lot of people don't know how to do it because they're lost.
And the reason why they're frustrated and why they feel helpless and try to self-medicate or lose themselves in sex, romantic relationships, or material objects, or success, which is all pointless. It is ultimately pointless. To who you are, the deepest level of your existence, it's pointless. It's a play, it's a fun play, that's okay. But it's not going to liberate you from your suffering. So, to step out of the brain is the key, but most of us have been our whole life been trained and indoctrinated to use the rational mind. And this is why many people dig themselves into a deeper hole when they're already depressed, because the only tool that they ever knew how to use is the intellect. They go to school, they're being taught to use the intellect. They go to university, they're being taught to use the intellect. Nobody teaches them how to use their intuition. And that's the issue. So let's say I feel sad. And now I try to use my mind to figure out why I'm sad. But the mind is the inappropriate tool for it. So I get more sad because the mind can't do it.
Right.
This is what happened with depressed people, because their suffering comes from their thinking. That means their negative, unloving beliefs that they have about themselves and about life. Every belief creates an emotion. If you have negative beliefs about yourself, you create negative emotion about yourself, which is a harmful energy. So then you're trying to find out, why am I depressed? But now you start worrying about it, overthinking it, analyzing it, which makes the mind even more upset, more distressed, more anxious, and you dig the hole deeper. This is why you need to get out of the mind, because you can't use the mind to solve a depression. The mind itself is the reason why you're depressed, because the mind has been filled with bullshit since you're a kid, with toxins. Negative beliefs are toxins. That's important to understand. So when those thoughts are running in your mind, you can't counter-think it. For example, those people who advise you to think positively don't get that forcefully thinking positively is negative. I'll tell you why. Because if I experience a negative belief, and now I judge the belief, I add negativity to the belief. So if I'm saying, oh, I'm not supposed to think that way, I start suppressing the negative thought. Guess what? I give it energy through suppression. But if I have a friendly, open attitude, like a passive curiosity, I watch my breath and I have a passive curiosity. Now I allow everything that happens in the mind. No bias. I don't judge anything that's going on. No matter how naughty, how mean, how let's say, judging, how brutal, whatever is going on in the mind. None of that I judge, but then I have a passive curiosity about it. And I watch it from the position of my breath, from feeling my breath, I watch it. Now I don't add energy to it because I stop using thought. I just watch the thought. Now it has a momentum. If I keep doing this for a few weeks, the thoughts will start reducing because I stop irritating my mind. My mind is just reproducing the diet it has been feeding on for most of my life. So if I watch news all day, paranoia, fear, propaganda, this is the way my brain software runs. If my parents are abusive and I believe what they have been saying, well, guess what? Yeah, they live in my mind as a belief structure. Even I might have disconnected from them, I'm not talking to them anymore or whatever, but their beliefs are still in my head as a matrix. And now this matrix is running. Now, if my answer to this matrix is I try to forcefully rewrite it with a sense of judgment and violence, I'm going to make it more upset. The mind has been abused enough. It has been fed enough bullshit. So what am I going to do? I'm going to smile. I'm going to sit down in meditation. I have this little smirk. Just this little smirk. I'm going to sit upright. I'm going to relax. Now I'm going to love everything that happens in the mind. Love is a big word. I don't mean obsess. Don't mean fall in love. I mean, I'm just going to have a gentle attitude towards everything in the mind. And guess what? When I have a gentle attitude to thought and mind, I stop abusing my own mind. And my mind starts clearing and healing itself naturally, intuitively. But I need to let go of the compulsive need to think, of the addiction to thought. And this is the biggest hang up for most. They don't even know that it is possible to not think. They don't know.
But it's hard to not think.
It takes a certain meditative ability to develop that, yes.
Right.
If you speak, for example, to native tribes, it's very interesting. There were some anthropologists who went to South America, into the Amazon forest, and they met some native tribes. And they kind of could communicate with them because they had a dialect that was familiar. And some of the hunters were sitting down with the anthropologist and said, we can think or not think. We have choice about thinking. We think when we have to. When we don't have to, we turn it off. To the Westerner, who has been educated in rational thought, it's mind-blowing. Literally, because like, what, there's a button, you can just use it? But it's because they have not been programmed in our modern society where we have been bombarded with media since we're babies, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. So we have so many toxins in our nervous system, energetic parasites, fearful beliefs, all of that needs to clear, but you can't clear it by avoiding it. You need to become fully aware of it and then learn non-reactivity. Because only when you learn non-reactivity, you stop adding fuel to the fire. That's the point. So it needs a thought discipline.
Right. So I have another question for you. Do you know there's some families that the depression is like a generation to generation? They say, "Oh, I'm depressed because my mom. I'm depressed because my grandmother. I'm depressed because." So that what happens in there? Like that pattern come from generation to generation. So they probably the first person that suffered from depression for the first time teach the depression to the next generation and then teach the depression for the next generation. It works like that?
Well, yes. I'm going to insert a little joke, and I hope people don't take it serious. So let's say I would tell people, "Oh, I'm so depressed because 100,000 years ago, a Neanderthal hit my ancestor on the head with a club." When are you going to take responsibility? Right? The great spiritual teacher, Alan Watts, used to joke about it. He said, "Well, people say I'm depressed because my mom dropped me on my head when I was a baby. And she was depressed because her mom dropped her on her head when she was a baby." And he said, "Well, at some point we end up at some sort of disappearing monkey or something, right? We never get to it." This is what he said. So you need to get to it. When are you getting to it? In the present moment. That's the only place to get to it. If you're not taking responsibility for your suffering, nobody will. That's a fact. So you need to get out of the victim mentality. And the idea that you are determined is bullshit. Psychiatrists will tell you it's your DNA, it's your nervous system, you're just the way you are. Nonsense. Epigenetics will tell you, you can listen to, for example, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's a famous epigeneticist, that your energy frequency determines what genes in your DNA are being activated or deactivated. Genetic material can change through a change in consciousness. So the determinism of old, don't believe that nonsense. Don't believe the idea that because your mother was depressed and your grandmother was depressed and your grandpa was a war veteran and was an alcoholic, that you need to be an alcoholic. They have been given you the energy, yes, the energy and the information of the mental illness, the ancestral karma has been handed down from generation to generation. The condition has been handed down because everybody played victim.
Yes. Everybody blames everybody.
Exactly. Nobody takes responsibility. But interestingly, those who come to me who claim responsibility for their state of consciousness, they start transforming. Now, when they have children, they stop passing it on.
Exactly.
That's the key here. So, in a way, it's true what you say. Yes, it's being handed down from generations to generation. That is correct. But now we are in a generation where the information is available, the teachers are available, the counselors, the healers are available for you to integrate that trauma, transform the energy, and stopping the trend. We are now the generation with the most information and access to tools in the history of, let's say, the recorded history of mankind. So if it is about self-empowerment, and I don't mean force and might and control over others, I mean power over your own state of being. Not in terms of control, but in terms of loving attention to your garden. The opportunity has never been greater to transform. So excuses don't cut it. I would say it's also straightforward. I have experienced my own share of trauma in this lifetime, and I got to it. And there are many things I did that a therapist wouldn't be capable of doing with me. I did this through meditation. So at some point, I went from being the depressed to becoming the healer. So why am I saying this? Because there are people, when I speak of victim identity, which is ego identity, they say, get out of the victim identity. They say, well, you're a therapist. You don't know what it's like because you haven't experienced it. I have experienced it. I know what it's like to suffer from a low state of consciousness. I do understand it. So I had to learn for myself how to turn it around, how to develop methods of changing that, and you all can. But of course, if you have the chance of receiving assistance as an act of self-love, get the assistance. Be self-responsible. Yeah, a therapist is not going to heal you. He's going to assist in healing.
Right.
He's going to give you the tools to self-heal and help you reflect, yeah, and help you integrate. But ultimately, the work is being done by you. When you get that and you get to it, and you stop buying into the psychiatry system, you stop buying into the ICD-10 and then ICD-11 and whatever diagnosis stories. Yeah, because all those stories, they offer you more ego. They offer you more narratives. They offer you more, well, I'm a borderline personality disorder. I can't receive healing. That's why I can act like a dysfunctional elephant in a porcelain shop, right? Own up. You are perfectly capable with a set of discipline. And discipline here is self-love. Discipline means I love myself enough that I'm worth it to develop the discipline for myself. Because I care about myself, I will be disciplined. I will be determined to learn the tools, to develop self-inquiry. They start transforming myself from inside out. A pill is not going to do it. Hospitalization is not going to do it. Yeah. It's very important to be real here. Yeah. I don't care what my colleagues think. I'm going to say what's true. I don't care about offending anybody because I only care about truth.
Right.
Yeah. Being afraid of offending anyone is for the cowards. For those who haven't overcome their ego, they're always afraid of offending anyone. If you see, you can never offend anyone. You can only offend their illusions. Yeah, if truth is offensive to someone, it's because they are attached to illusion.
Wow, we have 54 minutes. So this is amazing, this conversation. And Julian, I want you to tell everybody where they can contact you. And I already have your banner here with all your information.
Oh, that's wonderful. See? Well, you can simply Google my name because I have a website, I have a YouTube channel, and I have an Instagram account. So when you find my website, it's julian-polzin.de. There is all my contact information. And for those who seek counseling, I offer online sessions via Zoom, right? So
yes,
it's very possible to receive counseling from me. I'm approachable, and I think my rates are pretty fair. €45 for an hourly session is not much. And when people say they can't afford it, I'm going to poke the victims' identities a little bit. If you can afford buying cigarettes, if you can afford buying a fancy dress occasionally, if you can afford, certain comforts, you can afford taking care of your own consciousness. And if that's not your highest priority yet, you're not ready for healing. I'm going to say it straightforward.
Exactly, because you are the kind of therapist that you talk to the person and you will see if that person is open to healing or not, and you say straightforward, you know what, you're not ready.
Well, there's certain people that came to me, and I would tell them when they're not ready. Yeah, I can sense when they're playing a power game, and a game of manipulation, a game of attention, a game of wanting to be right. And I don't play those games anymore because let's say, since I see it from a spiritual perspective, there are no lost causes. Those of us who have verified spiritual experience, that means near-death experiences, past life memory, or let's say other experience like visions or communications from higher dimensions, so to speak, when we have experienced that we know there is no death. And when we know there is no death in that sense, except a death of the suit, then we do understand, well, if someone is not willing to heal in this life, he has another life, he has another life, he has another life. If we try to force healing, we are in the ego, because we now try to manipulate someone into healing when they're not ready to receive yet. It's a matter of humility. It's a matter of being humble in order to be able to receive. And if someone is open to receive, I'll do everything in my power that I can to give them the knowledge at hand to self-transform.
And yes, I know you do, because you've been transforming myself. And I'm so happy that you are in my life. And I feel every time I have a session with you, every time I feel that I grow more and more. And you know, I've been having a long trajectory of healing, especially for the traumas I carry in my past that is not anymore there. I know there was there for me to learn, and you teach me that there was there for me to learn. And I cannot thank you more about that you make me all the time realize who I am and why I'm here and why I get this way and why I got that way. So without you, I probably now will be like the person I'm becoming, because I still growing, and I'm continuing with you because I really feel wonderful when I have a session with you. And I recommend everybody, if they have the chance, if they want to heal, to look for Julian Posey, because he's a real healer, and I love him. And thank you so much to be in my show today, because I know a lot of people, they need to hear what we said today. And thank you so much to be in the Bilingual show, the Gloria.
I'm grateful again that you give me this platform, because it's not about my personality. It's about the mission that the consciousness that I am has, and this mission is straightforward: get as many people across into a higher dimension as possible. If they're willing to receive, this can be done. And when you experience transformation as you have, it's important to understand this. When you are humble enough to receive, and it's not always easy, you know this, it can be very painful to be born, to become aware. When awareness gets born, right, to become aware of the little guilts, the little shames, the little manipulations that we have used, right? It's not always easy, but to own that is really the key to transformation. And the interesting thing is, when you are humble, you actually self-loving. Yes. Why is that? Because someone who has pride or vanity is someone who thinks that they need to be more than they are, because them being themselves is not enough. So when you accept yourself as you are, being humble is not a big deal, because you don't need to be more than you are, and then you can be worked with.
Wow, thank you so much. So I'm gonna put you in the green room, and I'm gonna wrap this show because we have already 1 hour. And thank you so much again, and see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, there you go. All right, so thank you so much to be in the Bilingual show, the Gloria. I feel so honored to have Julian, my coach, my spiritual coach, here today, and to be able to share with you. Because remember, I always tell you guys that everything I do to feel better, I always gonna share with you. And I'm in the process of transformation. Believe it or not, I have a lot of problem with the self-love. I have a lot of problems with fear. I have a lot of problems with a lot of stuff. And you probably would think, oh no, she have it all figured out. And not, I don't have it all figured out. I'm just learning like you. And I'm here to transform myself first, to be able to help to transform other people. And the only way for us to transform is to be aware and to create the awareness around the world for people to feel better. And now in this moment of the world that is going through a lot of rough moments, and this is the time to go. They are putting us inside of our house, so this is the time for us to go inside of us and clean all the things that we have, and remove all the traumas, and remove all the sadness, and empty that negative space that we carry, to bring more positivity in our bodies, in our mind, in our soul. And like Julian said, we are beings that we are connected, and I know that whoever is gonna watch this show in some way is gonna feel the impact of the awareness, and that's what I'm here. And every day and every time I go in my social medias, I talk about this and about depression and anxiety, because I do suffer from that. And I'm gonna make the work so hard in myself to be better, that one day I'm gonna say I'm not suffering anymore of any of those things, because I just recognize myself. I love myself so much that it's not worth it to be sad or unhappy with all this stuff. So anyway, guys, thank you so much to be in the bilingual show, The Gloria. I'm gonna come at 3:30 again, so you guys gonna have a OD from me today. It happens, and somebody contacted me that he wants to be in my show today, and I said, let's do it today then. So thank you so much. See you soon, and see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's gonna be en español, y los espero el próximo viernes, que va a ser en español. Yo sé que hay algunas personas que no entienden nada de inglés, pero esta es la oportunidad perfecta para aprender otros idiomas. Igualmente yo estoy aprendiendo francés, y de la forma de aprender francés es escuchando programas, canciones y todo eso, y eso es lo que yo deseo. Por eso creé el Bilingual Show de Gloria, para que los dos mundos se puedan unir y los dos mundos se puedan conectar. De todas maneras, que tengan una feliz tarde. Thank you so much, everybody, and I see you in 30 minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye.